Hey everybody, Matt Michaels here on the DeFalco Files with the owner and creator of FSW, the Future Stars of Wrestling, Mr. Joe DeFalco. And Joe, happy 13th anniversary, come and gone. What a show this weekend. We're going to talk all about it, but your initial thoughts on how the weekend went.
I guess I could say I was happily surprised. You know, I think I talked about it last week that ticket sales weren't great. And it was like, you know, so much was going on. And we ended up, you know, the last 4 or 5 days, we literally doubled the front row. You know, we had one of the poorest pre-sales going into like Tuesday. And then, you know, we only had 43 front rows sold. And by the time the show started, you know, we ended up actually having to add chairs because my motto is always, you never run out of front row. So it's like if somebody wants to pay that extra money, you want to give them that opportunity, because I've learned through the years in most cases, if you can't get in the front row, you're not paying for the second row seat. So you'll just pay less for the general admission. So even though it seems like it's a $10 difference, it's really a $20 difference, because most people are content with the third row GA if they can't get the first row. So, you know, we ended up doubling that. We had a really good walk up. You know, we put about 250 chairs out there, you know, hoping it would look relatively full. And then we had to keep adding chairs. So, you know, kudos to everybody who came out. It was Father's Day. You know, us alone did, you know, what was it? 1, 2, 3 shows on the AEW weekend. There was 4 others. There was 3 AEW shows. Then, because we had the anniversary 3 weeks later, it forced us to do a high octane a week later. And it was like, there's been so much wrestling going on. So in the last 3 weeks, there's literally been 12 shows that we were involved, you know, 9 shows, not counting the AEW, the 3 that they did. So, you know, you would think there's, you know, got to be some wrestling fan burnout from 12 shows in a 3-week span. So,
and
you know,
and you're also not counting any of the shows that might have happened AEW weekend over that 4th course, you know, of days. Like you said, you're looking at the shows that the collective put on. And then on top of that, there was that women's show the week before that. So in 4 weeks, and then there was the Versus show because Nick Holiday and Duke Lawrence came straight from Versus to FSW on Sunday. So we're talking somewhere around 20 wrestling shows within 4 weeks.
Yeah, Violence and Suffering did a show the Thursday night after ours, you know. Yeah. So the fact of the matter is we had a really good turnout. That you know, it was funny. You had talked about injuries at the anniversary show last week, and Cody broke his nose. We actually had 3 injuries. Matt Vandergriff was part of 2 of them. He broke our fucking camera, and he broke Corbin's face, the camera guy. So, you know, he was walking around with dark sunglasses like he was Stevie Wonder.
Oh, man. Wow. And that's not a cheap camera. Does that come out of Vandergriff's payday? Does the envelope suddenly disappear?
Yeah, I told him, I said, yeah, I'm not going to pay you for the next 30 shows.
Oh, Matt better get signed quick. That's the moral of this story. You know, the first thing on the show was the Nick Bockwinkel Memorial Battle Royal. What is it like, do you think, when I think this might be one of the only times that the talent gets kind of used to what they would be doing if it was, say, SmackDown or, a televised show that, let's say, goes to commercial, and you have that kind of wait time where they've just been introduced, but you come back from commercial and their theme is still playing. It feels like it's been, 3 to 5 minutes of just theme for them standing in the middle of the ring. The guys in the Battle Royal, because of the video package that started off the show, they had a good about 3 minutes or so in the ring, in the dark. How do you think that is for them getting used to something like that? And is it awkward when you have the intent to beat the crap out of the other guys, but you can't start doing it until the lights come up and that bell rings?
It has to be. We've always had issues with time constraints, and when we did the Full Tilt weekend, I saw Sami Callihan do it in a 8-man scramble, which led into the opening. And when everybody gets an individual entrance, that takes time. Now, Battle Royal is not an individual entrance, but you're introducing upwards of 25 people. So that's going to take 5 or 6 minutes. And it's like, you know what? We're always running late. Let's see if we can come up with a way to make it maybe a little less time. Because, again, the show ran long. It probably ran 3 hours and 15 minutes. Well, it saved 5 to 7 minutes from where we ended up starting. So, because normally we might start 5 minutes late to begin with. Then we do the intro, and all of a sudden it's, 25 minutes after the hour, and we're just getting started. So,
right.
I remember last anniversary, because we didn't do the Battle Royal because we combined the Rumble into the 2-day event. And when you're introducing individual guys and it's a Rumble, you can't really gauge the time. And all of a sudden, what you think might be 28 minutes ends up being 45 minutes from beginning to end. That show was over 4 hours last year.
Right. And that was just day one. So it was a true WrestleMania weekend for you. Well, and speaking of the Battle Royal, let me ask you, Bodie, young prodigy, won, which I think was one of the smartest things to get the fans really into it. That was an incredible pop when he won. Was there any other individuals that stuck out in your mind or that you heard good things about from either the fans or from some of the other guys?
Well, I think we presented Duke and AJ Mana in a very good light.
Yeah.
And they definitely have a lot of potential, but they still have a lot of work to do to get there. Duke reminds me of a young Tyshawn Prince, but he's got to get that work in. You know what I mean? It's like he has all the tools to be, a monster heel in FSW. And, sometimes, you see him and the difference is with Tyshawn that Duke wrestles all over. And because he's young and inexperienced, he doesn't get always put in the best light. And I think that really needs to change. You can't be a monster here and then down the road you're not,
Right.
We draw 300-400 fans there. But everything is about perception in the wrestling business. So if the perception is Duke is going to struggle to beat an undercard guy, I cannot have him come into FSW and destroy Graves or Hammerstone. You know what I mean?
Right.
It makes the rest of the roster not look very good. So, we're working on it. Again, he's not a kid, but he's new to the business. So, hopefully talking to him, it's a little easier than a 21-year-old kid who doesn't really understand not alone wrestling, but life. Here's a grown man, has a family, you know what I mean? So hopefully we can get him going in the right direction. And, he wasn't there, MK, but, I see two potential additions to rebuild the MK Army right there.
Yeah, because I mean AJ Mana is fabulous as well, and I think he's off the radar right now. In a lot of circles, and I think that's going to change within the next year. I think he's going to be someone who's getting a lot of buzz. Was there any temptation? Obviously, Bodie being obviously the thinnest guy in the battle royal. Was there ever any temptation of doing something like tossing Bodie into the front row and then having him work his way back in without touching the floor?
No, to be honest with you, I kind of let Sin, kind of put together the match.
Yeah.
I gave him what I needed. I told, I had the meeting beforehand and, talked to them about what I was looking for and, certain matchups and things like that of where we might want to go moving forward. But, you couldn't have did it any differently than what I would have wanted.
Right.
I broke it down who we want in the final 10, the final 5, the final 3, where we're going in that situation. And, they did the Andre the Giant thing with Duke, which got a big pop when he got tossed because he's a big dude. People take notice. As good as smaller guys like, nobody's going to tell me anybody's better than Jay Vidal and Matt Vandegrift. I love those guys, but when you see a guy like Big Duke, that's a guy, you take a step back. It's like, that's not the dude you want to walk into in an alley,
Right.
In the middle of the night and mouth off to him. You know what I mean? With Jay Vidal, you might think you could whoop his ass. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
With Big Duke, when you're 5'7", 170 pounds, it probably isn't a wise move to get in that guy's face.
Right. And the perception really that spot really worked. And I think Duke, after talking to him afterwards, I think he understands that what is being asked, what he's looking at in terms of wrestling as big as he is, making that, protecting the fact that he is a big man, he should be working as a big man. And then finally on the Battle Royal, let me ask you, in talking to some of the guys who were in it beforehand, a lot of like the Arizona guys, the younger guys who were in it were so excited to be included. And some of them even surprised that they were, getting the opportunity to be in the Battle Royal. Does that speak to what you're seeing in not only the ability of the guys, but also the professional manner that those guys come in with? The way that they, literally they shake everyone's hands. They're very yes, sir, and very polite with their manners.
They know. They know that if I hit up Gallo and let them know they were being a douchebag, he would probably stick him in a closet after he beats the fuck out of him. You know what I mean? And that's the old school mentality of how things are. There was a few of our guys that were penciled in to be in the Battle Royal that I didn't see Thursday. I didn't see for setup Sunday. I didn't even see for the show. So even if they were on the show, they weren't on the show. There was a couple of them that worked the shows this weekend. I saw one in particular working Saturday. I saw one working Sunday. That's cool. You're making your choice. I'm taking, a few weeks off because we've had so many things. We're coming back July 22nd. And I'm instituting a different policy. It's kind of like you expect everybody to be there. It's like, you know what? We're doing a show July 22nd. I will contact you about your availability. If I don't contact you, then you're not booked. A lot of the younger guys show up or just assume they're going to be on the show. You know what? We're not doing that anymore. You know what? We're using guys that are deserving to be in the spots. Some of the younger guys, not because of anything they did wrong, but they're not ready for that position yet. And we're going to make sure that Future Shocks and High Octanes and Mechas and all that are going to be separated the way they need to be. If you're not good enough, then you're not good enough. And it's not being not good enough because you suck. It's you're not good enough because you're not ready yet. You haven't had enough work yet. And I can't never put you on a show because then you'll never be ready. But Future Shock needs to really focus on those younger guys, the Arizona guys who come in. And we've already seen a guy like Blair Brody break out and Devin Reno that they're really capable of being in main matches on bigger shows. Yeah. So they will get that opportunity. But, some of our younger guys that we've kind of put in there, and sometimes you do it because you have to, but it's like, I'm going to make sure that moving forward, you're going to see top tag team guys like Tito and Che or Gatson or Eli Everfly or some of those really outstanding guys that you may have seen, even Wise Guy who always wants to be here. These are guys that where they come from, they're big fucking deals. They haven't had the opportunity to be the big deals. Gatson had a run years ago. He's come back and he's in the best shape of his life. Eli Everfly, we didn't use that often. And then when we started to, people were like, holy shit, this guy's a bad motherfucker. And, a guy like Juicy and Toa, how they became regulars for what they did. And unfortunately, we lost Toa because he signed AEW, Ring of Honor, whatever it is. And those guys are the ones that are going to catapult everything, especially now when there's 5 other shows in town. And a lot of the mid-card to lower-card guys work everywhere and girls. Well, you know what? I need to separate ourselves, especially when we run a smaller show. When we run a bigger show, it's usually a bigger deal. The last anniversary show, there was Juicy, there was Toa, there was EC3, there was Danny Limelight, there was TJP. But now New Japan ran. So, and TJP in New Japan in Japan, he's over there, and Tom Lawler and Danny Limelight and the 1%, and then all of a sudden Impact has the pay-per-view, and there's Chris Bay and anybody else we might use. I would say it's been a very long time since we ran an anniversary show that basically was all the main roster localized guys. Right. Where the out-of-town guys are Hammerstone and Jacob Austin Young, who've been with us for 10 years. Graves wasn't even on the show. Right. Everything was localized. There was no fly-ins. There was no big names. Yet we outdrew our FSW Revolver show that had, 15 guys on it that are known on an extremely national level. Right.
Right. And that's something that I think that there was a pride amongst, everyone involved. You could tell that they were happy to see that as being the local talent, as being the guys who have been either wrestling for the company for, anywhere from a decade to the full 13 years. There was just this, swell in the chest that they had so much pride in the fact that the fans came out for them and they didn't need the, the Matt Hardy to really have an amazing turnout in the crowd. And the crowd was hot. And I think, like I said, Bodie winning the Battle Royal was the first step in that being wonderful. And then the next thing is you open your first singles match being Jay Vidal versus Matt Vandegrift. These guys could probably wrestle again a 60-minute Ironman match, to bury the hatchet, to do a blow off. That's how good they are, and that's how well they've worked together. And then the fans got one of the nicest little surprises when Jay Vidal cheated. And are we finally going to see that bad bitch coming out of Jay?
Well, I put that match initially going to be opener to like really give the hot opener and things like that. And there was some things about it that irritated the fuck out of me. It was like, you can't put all your eggs in one basket. I know athletically those guys are going to go out there and kill it, which they did, which really sets the tone. But all of a sudden there's a ref bump, there's a low blow, there's 27 near falls. It's like, guys, save some for the rest of the show, and that was the one issue I had,
Well, Joe, I mean, the fact of the matter too is Tom Crawford, he's sitting there ringing the bells and got his bell rung in the first match. So, and he amazingly
was able
match,
to. That was Remy's match. What do you mean?
Oh, that was Remy's. Oh, that's right. It felt like it was that match. But
no, he got super kicked by Remy. It's
right.
Funny watching that meme. His head hits back, like smashes against the guardrail. But thank God there's nothing in that head, so it didn't really affect anything for Tom.
So with Jay now becoming once again the No Limits champion, being a heel, does that give you a little more flavor now?
What do you mean? What do you mean? He's not a heel. He just did something that turned the match around. That doesn't make him a heel because so was Steve Austin a heel because he did a lot of shit stuff that he did. Half the crowd when Matt Vandergriff won, and again, Jay Vidal takes things a little too personally. So everybody loves Jay Vidal. Matt Vandergriff, who's one of the most popular wrestlers, wins, and the crowd cheers. So, right. Of course, Jay Vidal looks at it as, oh, they turned my back. They turned their backs on me. Now, Jay Vidal wrestles Matt Vandergriff, and then Jay Vidal wins, and a bunch of the people cheer. So does that mean they just turned their back on Matt Vandergriff? Or does it mean, oh, cool, it's a title change, just like the most hated guy, Gregory Sharp? There was still a lot of people who cheered for him because they got to see history. They got to see a title change. If Jay Vidal would have wrestled Action Braxton and that happened, yeah, maybe. Because here's a guy, or Danny Rose,
right,
and the Suavecitos. But, when Matt and Damian Drake were the Unguided, they did things that presented them as heels, and they were able to, wrestle Death Proof, and at the time, Death Proof got way more cheers.
Right.
But as things progressed, being that they were a cool tag team to watch, they forgot about the dastardly deeds the Unguided did, and the fans got behind them like they had done before. Because when you see things you like, you're going to cheer. Right. Jay Vidal can be an asshole and try to cheat to win and doing all that stuff. And yeah, on paper, if you look at it, maybe he's a heel, but people who like him are still going to cheer him. Remy Marcel is a guy who kind of turned heel on Gregory Sharp when he was Hyperstreak, and that kind of catapulted Gregory Sharp to what he is now because everybody cheered Remy Marcel for doing shitty things to Gregory Sharp.
Right.
Is Clutch a babyface and Nick Xander a heel? Because after Clutch lost, he beat the shit out of Nick Xander, and people like watching somebody get the shit beat out of him. And after he splashes them, they're chanting one more time. Right. But I guarantee you at the next show, they're going to be cheering Nick Xander.
Well, and that, I guess what I'm looking at is with Jay now retaining or getting the title back, is there fresh matchups that you see in the future? Are there guys that Jay might not have worked that you're looking at? And because of what you just said too, there's such a gray area now between heels and faces and the fans, liking heel activity because it's this guy, or liking face activity because they're going against someone they hate. Can you foreseeably see things that Jay can do as champ now that he hadn't had the chance to do in his first run?
Well, I'm waiting for Jay Vidal versus Matt Vandegrift 4. I'm waiting for Jay Vidal versus Eli Everfly 3. I'm waiting for a Nevada State champion, Gregory Sharp, who beat Jay Vidal in a grudge match at the last anniversary show, versus the No Limits champion, Jay Vidal, for a match there. I'm waiting to see Damian Drake versus Jay Vidal. Who knows? I don't know if anybody's actually waiting to see Braxton versus Jay Vidal, but, now that he has the case, it could be. I'm hoping Braxton cashes in against Hammerstone. I'd love to see that match.
I think there was a small feeling going around, from a couple people that I talked to that seemed to feel that Braxton would potentially get to cash in the case that night on Hammerstone, because of the fact that Ice and Hammerstone, talk about going to your limits. These guys just, holy crap, they left it all out there. That finisher was, man, Hammerstone posted that, that meme of it. It was unbelievable what Ice did, with the post up and being able to, for Hammerstone to hold him and Ice to be able to post like that was just unbelievable.
The way Ice Williams was able to stand up straight while Hammerstone held him up was amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, that was Hammerstone's strength.
Well, yeah, you got to give a little bit of credit on that posting up. But absolutely,
the Nightmare Pendulum has always been one of my favorite finishers, and to do it from there, holy shit!
Yeah,
fuck, I'm gonna kill this motherfucker. There could have been a riot, because between Braxton and Ice Williams, I think they closed Dre's down where they frequent, because if you didn't know any better, you would have thought Ice Williams was the baby face there.
I 100% agree, and I think that there was an energy, the near falls, just watching people react when it looked like Ice was going to win, and those fans of Ice, it was crazy to see the reactions. And
yeah, thank God he didn't win, because now I can hopefully get them to come back if we do a rematch.
27 more matches. I love it.
Yeah.
But that brings up a good point, and that is, how hard is it for you to not pull the trigger quick enough, so, because that temptation is there of like, well, hey, we could do something where that case is taken, and then we could do the quick cash in, and you've done that before.
Not very often. Graves was the only one who actually cashed in the same day, and that was when they cashed in the tag belts. Right. After one became, one was the heavyweight champion, the other became the Nevada State champion, and then later on they became the tag champion. So that was, that was a pretty huge moment, when we did that. So in most cases, as much as an annoyance Braxton can be, he isn't an idiot. So now, if he cashes in and loses, he's back to square one of nothing. Now he possesses the Holy Grail, the Infinity Stone. Now he can wait as long as possible, and now people have to pay attention to him. If he cashes in and loses, nobody's paying attention to him. So he could take the whole year, or wait for that right opportunity to slide in, and after somebody gets destroyed, walk in and not have to do anything, which he's good at, and then become a champion by not doing anything.
Well, that brings up a question that I have, and I don't know if you've ever done it before. Is the cash in the case something that could actually be put on the line over the next year in a match where Braxton could actually potentially lose the cash in the case?
Well, I believe that has actually happened before. So Jacob Austin Young has actually won the cash in the case twice, and he has never cashed in.
Oh,
Okay.
man.
The first time was when the following united at the Silverton, and Jacob Austin Young had the case. Bryce Harrison was gone for a year, and they were all under the masks, and they cashed in the case. And when the referee counted to 3, Bryce Harrison unmasked as Bryce Harrison, and it wasn't Jacob Austin Young.
Yeah.
So that's how that happened. Then there was a feud after that involving the following where they kind of broke up, and Jacob Austin Young wrestled Cutthroat or Crash Test or whatever he was called, and the cash in the case was on the line, and I'm pretty sure Cody beat Jake for that. So Jake has never cashed in, even though he's the only guy to win it twice.
And overall, with that match, what were your opinions on what you saw of the match? Did you think that the spots were part of the story? Do you think that they told a story well enough with what they were, given? And it's hard to do 7 people in a ladder match a lot of the times, especially when one of the guys who I think impressed me. Well, 2 guys impressed me. Laz did some great stuff, and Ricky Tenacious, man, he showed that he can work. Everyone had to sit through Ricky's singing, which was
I had to sit through it twice, bro. It was like he practiced it beforehand. It's like, Jesus Christ, I got to hear this shit twice.
Dude, I got there before you did, and I actually sat through the walkthrough about 3 times, so I knew what was going down for a while, and it was phenomenal. Though it was a good setup, and there was just some good spots in there. When you look at the success, you got, and it's hard to, sometimes you get lost in that. You got a guy like Damian Drake in there, who, he ended up doing a couple really amazing spots, really nice stuff. And sometimes that can get overshadowed because you have someone like Braxton, who of course creeps in at the end and steals the case. Is it hard when you look at it on paper to just kind of go, okay, how is this going to work out? What do I need from these guys? And is it hard to convey that and get it executed story-wise as needed? Or does that help because you have guys like Cody and Jacob Austin Young and Funny Bone and Damian Drake, who have such a veteran presence in terms of having, wrestled these types of matches a number of times? And does that also add itself to the value of it being an anniversary show to have guys who have had ladder matches in company a number of times show up and just really put it all out there?
Without a doubt. But you got to remember, guys like Cody, they've gotten a lot older, from when they were more maybe willing to do the craziest shit in the world. You know what I mean? When you're trying to establish yourself, it's a little different than when you are established. You know what I mean? So now you got the younger cats coming in. They want to do all this crazy stuff. And maybe you're kind of like, hey, yeah, kid, I used to do that. Maybe we could tone it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, Funny Bone never wants to tone it down. But, he got the staple spot in, and it was a nice little 2-minute comedy segment that got over with the crowd. I'll be honest. I was in and out talking with people, and I watched a good amount of it. I didn't see Cody get fucked up. my kid I was talking with somebody else, and he was talking about how Cody got fucked up. And then when I saw him get up, I saw all the blood. And, and then, later on, he kind of went crazy, but Cody's a guy who's been known to go crazy. So, if you got punched square in the face and broke your nose, how would you react? I would think that's at least that's a good excuse to get a little crazy, when you get fucked up in a match like that. You know what I mean? But the younger guys seem to do well. Heard glowing reports, amongst the crew, and I think it's good to have that veteran presence mixed in with a guy like Ricky and Braxton, who have never been in that match before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, for them, that's probably, for Laz, Braxton, and Ricky Tenacious, I have to believe that is the biggest match they've ever had in their careers. You know, it's a major showcase show on the biggest, showcase event that we have, our anniversary show. And, pretty much everybody from beginning to end, the Battle Royal is a Battle Royal, punch kick, trying to throw people over. It's a clusterfuck. Let's be honest. It's a Battle Royal, but you're giving some opportunities to people who work hard, but work hard enough to that they're capable of being in that match, which don't confuse with being capable of being in a 10-minute match on a high octane. You know what I mean? It's for some guys like, Warren and Andy and a few others to get their feet wet and see what it's like to actually be in an important match. And now hopefully strive to say, you know what? I was in the Battle Royal. I want to be in the Rumble. Being in the Rumble is different. There's less people in there. You get to showcase talents. And, we usually do a 30-man Rumble. So there's definitely going to be spots available. But, again, it's going to be the strong survive, man. We're not handing those spots out. You have to earn it, and you have to deserve it.
And speaking of deserving, and I think this was one of my favorite matches because it was a match that wasn't supposed to happen. And that was Bret the Threat versus Sin Bodhi. And Kajak, had some things going on where he was not able to make the show. So here you go. What do you do? And the choice of Sin coming in and accepting that challenge that Bret threw out there. Boy, those two, being teacher and student, man, they worked really good. Was that something that in your mind, when you wanted to make sure that Bret still had a match on the card, was it Sin who came to you? Did you go to Sin? Was there any other thoughts of other people that might be, available? Because, for old man Sin there, that was a Battle Royal and about a 10-minute match or so with Bret the Threat, who is no joke. He's very, very competitive when he gets in the ring. So was that something that just came together and worked nicely because Sin knows how Bret works and was able to step in and give a wonderful match?
Well, we'll go back a little bit in time. I had no knowledge of Kajak not going to be there. All I know is I saw some pictures and I was confused because I know at the show the night before, Death Proof was supposed to wrestle Bodhi and Kajak. And I'm looking at the pictures and I'm wondering why Kid Isaac was in one of the corners.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. And then I kind of found out that it was Bodhi and Kid Isaac. So now, the antennas went up, but I didn't know the reason why Kajak wasn't there. And I had no knowledge of it. And then I got a call from Bret, very panicky and, very down, because he was like, hey, bro, we got a problem. Cal Jack's not going to be there. He has an emergency he's got to take care of. So in the back of my head, I kind of thought that this could happen, but really didn't prepare for it. So It's kind of like, okay. And he's like, oh, what do you want to do? Blah, blah, blah. I got some people coming. I'm like, bro, we'll figure out a match for you. There's no way we're going to do this and just not have you in a match. And then it was trying to figure out where we're going to go. And it's like, if Brett is going to demand a match against somebody, you can't have a match against a Battle Royal participant that is barely a low-card guy who wrestles on occasional shows here and there. Nobody's going to really care about that match.
Right.
And it's like, in all honesty, my first thought was Bodie, because Bodie and Cal Jack together. The reason Cal Jack and Brett are in this feud is because of Bodie.
Right.
But it was like, Bodie was positioned to be in the Battle Royal. It would kind of take away from his moment if he wins the Battle Royal to now get into a fight with Brett. Where do we go with the finish in that?
Right.
I'm not bringing Brett in, and it's like, oh, great, let's go do another schmaz,
Yeah.
And to be honest, I was thinking, and I'm like, hey, I think Brett the Threat and Blair Brody would be a good match. But my senses were, we're in the process of trying to build Blair Brody for people to care, and they're starting to, but having him work Brett the Threat right now is probably not in the best options of what we're looking for. And credit Brett, he was like, hey, what about Sin Bodie? And I wasn't thinking about it. And when Sin came in, I'm like, hey, I need you to do the Battle Royal, but hey, this is what I need. And he said, absolutely. He's been in the trenches with Brett from the beginning.
Yeah.
So, it ended up becoming a teacher versus the student thing. And Brett the Threat, who has been, very, very strong and has done huge things for a guy with his experience level, that, that's a big win for him. And, we still expect, whether it's at the next show or the show after, for Cal Jack and Brett the Threat to happen.
Yeah. And also, Sin got to take a nap at the end of the match with the sleeper win that Brett had. So
there he did. Thank God his girl was there to sell his merch.
Yeah. And by the way, anyone listening or watching who has never checked out Sin Bodie's LJN wrestling figures, the custom ones he does, check it out. You're gonna want to look into purchasing one, because they are pretty spectacular, and to see him up close.
He even has a Duke the Dumpster Drosy one. What, are you kidding?
Yes.
He's got like the most obscure, crazy, like 80s and 90s guys that you're like, holy shit, I can't believe he did one of that. And yeah, I'm not one to, put Sin over that much, but that stuff's really good.
Oh, that's what we need. Sin, we need a Joe DeFalco LJN figure for students. I bet you that'd be a high seller, because a lot of students would probably want to.
Actually, we need a Rocky T one, because that'll be the biggest seller, because Rocky T will buy 100 of them himself.
So, you had a good tag team match with TBD defending the titles against Fresco and Watson. You had that match kind of in, it was in a position right before the main event. So, it was at a point where I think that fans were still into it, but they had just come off the Remy and Greg Sharp match. Was that a tough spot? And actually, was that a very good spot for those guys to be in, to just kind of learn about that feeling of, hey, it's still a big match. And even though there was so much thunder in that last match with all the weapons used and, being a blood feud, etc., that now your job is to come out there and don't lose the crowd before the main event. Was that a good teaching moment to get their feet wet into kind of, knowing what that feels like in terms of being positioned on cards down the future for them, no matter if it's in FSW or other places.
Well, it wasn't meant to be. The initial semi-main to break off the no holds barred match was now going to be a ground match between Cal Jack and Bret the Threat. So we were going to have the submissions match, which would be, to take the spot here and do a totally ground-based match into the main event. So when we had to change it and it became more of a regular match with Sin Bodhi and Bret the Threat, the decision to move the tag match to the semi-main was because of the story we were telling, that with TBD being involved and then getting involved in the main event, it's kind of like that old ECW style of one leaded into the other. And, I didn't want to burden the FSW Heavyweight Championship match by just moving everything back. And now that Hammerstone and Ice have to follow this crazy fucking no-holds-barred match. You know what I mean? So that seventh match, while it's important, initially we were going to have a women's match in there. But conflict of schedule and not realizing the date was the Sunday instead of the Saturday, Viva Van was unavailable. And, the best way to go from one extreme to the other is putting in a women's match that now gets the guys excited again. So that was the initial match 7 on the show. Then it became Bret and Cal Jack, and then it ended up with being the tag title match.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that was very smart in terms of putting that in there. So finally, to talk about that grudge match between Greg Sharp and Remy Marcel. It's Greg's first championship in FSW. And I think, you kind of mentioned about the fans cheering. It was a wonderful moment to see the fans recognize not only the title change's history, but also the fact that, Greg Sharp has been here all these years and has finally been able to, win an elusive title. And again, one of my favorite things is I have not seen a brick or a cinder block finish in a long while, and that it looked awesome live because that thing just exploded when he hit him with it. And there was some other good stuff. I've never seen a straight on decapitation type setup with Remy and setting Greg's head in the chair and almost coming down with the shovel onto Greg's head and cutting it off.
I'll tell you what, I think if he hit him with that, that might have been the finish. Remy Marcel may have retained.
Man, if and heads would have rolled.
Without a doubt.
But it was a wonderful, it was just a wonderful give and take in that match. And to show the respect that both of them have for each other in the end is what I think really stood out to me, because there was not a moment in that match where I think the fans didn't think that either of them could win. And that also was a theme too for the heavyweight championship match too. So, real big kudos on those two matches, having the fans engaged like that. What does it mean to you to finally see Greg get to the position, especially after, just a couple of years ago now, the meeting in the grocery store where it seemed like if Greg had the chance, he might have hit you with something from the frozen aisle, and he earned his respect.
Actually, we were by the egg section at the time. He was by the eggs, But yeah, if there was, we didn't talk for a while, and what's funny is Remy Marcel is the guy who talked to both sides to have a sit down.
Nice.
So Remy caused his own demise. If there's no Gregory Sharp, because the thing is with Gregory Sharp, you forget how long he's been there, and he's another guy who was there, during the Boulder Highway days. But Greg was a guy who was always in and out, and I've said it before. He'd be gone for 6 months. He'd come back. He'd be gone for 2 months. And he traveled all over the world. I remember he's like, I'm going to hitchhike across America and work different places. Like, you're out of your fucking mind, dude. It's like, don't be hitchhiking in Alabama and shit. You know what I mean? It's like you never know what's going to happen. And, and to be honest, when you look back at things, again, both parties had their thoughts of how things were without looking at the other person.
Right.
And, despite me putting over Greg and making him sure he's the guy who's going to work one of the younger guys because of his patience and the other thing, he also looks at it as, hey, I've done so much for this company. It seems like I'm being overshadowed and other people are getting these bigger opportunities, you know? So, and it's like, when the two heads prevailed, we came to an understanding in things. And despite all that, that didn't mean like, hey, Greg, I'm going to make sure you win a belt. That wasn't how it was, because I wasn't the hugest fan of Hyperstreak. I didn't see Hyperstreak as that guy who could carry, a championship. And we did that whole scenario. We set up the Nevada State tournament, and it was Remy, who's really supposed to be a heel, versus Hyperstreak. And, there was a reason why after that he went after Jay Vidal, and it was always the flavor of the month that the fans would get behind. They'd kind of like Hyperstreak, but they loved that guy for a short time. They loved that guy. And now as the babyface coming in, he was getting basically booed because no matter what Remy Marcel did, the fans were cheering him. He's the beloved guy. It's like Cody. It's like Funny Bone. Like, those guys can do no wrong, And after, Hyperstreak lost, he put him through, he pile drives him on the fucking wood, and people are still cheering that. Hyperstreak snapped, and now we have what came from that at, I believe it was Changing of the Game, probably in, March or May of last year.
Yeah.
So now everything, he feuded with Jay Vidal. He did a bunch of things. Remy was feuding with Class. And, we finally got back to the point of, where it all started. And, it was a long storyline that, really paid off. We took time away from it. It's probably one of the few that we've done something like that where with over a 6-8 month period, there was no conversations, no nothing with them. Then it became time. He did what he needed to do. He got himself to a point where he felt he was ready. And now it's time to go after Remy Marcel. And it was time to go full circle. And now he is now the new Nevada State champion. Now the question is, who are guys that might be interested? We have one guy who couldn't make the show because he had an Impact pay-per-view, who sent me a message reminding me that the only championship he hasn't won is the Nevada State title. So Chris Bay, even though he was at Slammiversary, he was paying attention to the going-ons of FSW. So when he gets back, we're going to be having a conversation, and who knows if Chris Bay and Gregory Sharp might be the match.
Yeah, and that's very, very interesting. And what an opportunity for Greg Sharp to make his name, solidify his name by beating the hell out of Chris Bay. I think very interesting to see that go down.
And Gregory Sharp just came off a time limit draw with one of the best technical wrestlers in the world, who was also at Slammiversary, Davey Richards.
Yeah. As you say it, the representation at Slammiversary of FSW was pretty big. Kenny King as well was there.
Kenny King, yeah. Sammy Callahan.
Yeah. There's just some great stuff going on with those guys. Fascinating that, even though they were not at the show, they had a pay-per-view going on at the exact same time, which is just kind of that weird conundrum in pro wrestling when you have, just representation at the same night, at the same time on a different show, which is really cool. Looking now forward, here we are. You got 4 weeks before the next show. What are your expectations on how these next 4 weeks are going to play out for you in terms of giving yourself a reset of the batteries and kind of giving the fans a breather before we head into which will be July, and that's the heart of summer. And, the heat is going to be on in the city pretty harshly. And there might be some grudges coming up just based off of what we've seen here. What are you looking forward to seeing over the next couple of weeks, in terms of getting yourself ready and what the future holds from that point on?
I like to say, Joe's going to take a break. We're not going to do a show for 4.5 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever it was. But it's like, obviously, the next day I'm planning the attack. You know what I mean? And it's like, we've come up with the name. It's going to be New Beginnings, being that we have some new champions, new feuds have been, planted the seeds for and things like that. But for this show with the new champions, I'm really trying to put together a special show. So what I'm looking to do now, No Limits champion Jay Vidal is the new No Limits champion. Well, I'm looking at Jay Vidal defending against maybe a former No Limits champion.
Sure.
I'm looking for, because I could confirm Jay Vidal, Hammerstone, Gregory Sharp, and TBD will be on hand. Okay, so maybe Hammerstone's going to wrestle a former FSW heavyweight champion. Maybe TBD is going to wrestle a former FSW tag team champion. Maybe we'll have an announcement about a women's vacated title happening that day. So if we're going to take 5 weeks off from the last show, or 4 weeks and 6 days, actually 5 days because it's going to be on the Friday. So making that show something special for people to not want to miss. There's a lot of No Limits guys that Jay Vidal can wrestle who he's never wrestled before, or, again, who's the former No Limits champions that we have utilized. We have Chris Bay, who lost to Jay Vidal on New Year's Eve. Jacob Austin Young, when it was the battle of JAI versus JAY. Brandon Gatson, who years ago was the No Limits champion. You know what I mean? It's like we can go that route. Matt Vandegrift, he is a former No Limits champion. Damian Drake, he's a former No Limits champion. There's numerous guys. Same thing with the tag teams. We've been talking with the 1% and the Reno Scum and the Commandos, and there's Death Proof. And, they might be having to handle their own issues. But those are all these teams that would be really interesting to see. TBD has never pinned Death Proof. There was a 3-way match where TBD pinned Sky High. For the number 1 contenders match, Toko Uso pinned Death Proof.
Yeah.
Become the champions that the match TBD was in. So there's never been a one-on-one match between TBD and Death Proof. So there's a lot going on there. Now, it might be a little more difficult with the Hammerstone thing, but maybe Hammerstone just defends against a former champion. Remy Marcel is a former FSW heavyweight champion.
Right.
Damian Drake's a former tag and no limits champion. So there's a lot of champions. Plus there's guys that have been around that maybe we haven't seen that are, looking for the return to, etch their name in stone as FSW champion. So, I got some ideas and, over the next week or so before my vacation, long awaited, I hope to have the card, the flyer out, and that way people have a good 3 weeks before the show to be like, oh shit, man, taking some time off. I need a break too. I spent a lot of money. AEW weekend, full tilt.
Yeah.
We had to run a show the week after the weekend because we had to do one show at least to set up for the anniversary show. So now we're taking some time off. We're coming back July 22nd. We'll come back the Friday or Saturday 2 weeks later in August. And then August 21st is Survival of the Fittest. Well, there's a lot of going-ons in there. Obviously TBD and the faction and Hammerstone and the faction. Survival of the Fittest is always kind of putting things together. So, who knows, what teams are going to be there. Again, I got some good ideas of how we're going to move forward. So, recharge those batteries and, I'm excited about what the future holds.
Yeah. And I think, again, fans who were at the show and fans who, quite frankly, couldn't make the show or watch FSW, in another city or even in another country on the internet. It's an exciting time. And I think that, the biggest factor is that everyone is treated like family at FSW in terms of the fans. The wrestlers really take that initiative to make the fans as happy as possible. Well,
except Brandon G, he's kind of a prick to people, but other than him.
Well, listen, Brandon G's getting his opportunities other places, man. Pretty soon you're going to have to be booking him in the main event. So
yeah, I'm going to be working on that one as we speak. Yeah. Brandon G versus Hammerstone. Main event anywhere.
I don't think the fans would mind seeing Brandon G versus Hammerstone because Brandon might get his ass handed to him and fans might like that.
I just want to see the two brothers finally get together, Brandon G and Ricky G,
Yeah. Oh man. Any final thoughts as we wrap up, Joe?
Yeah, it ended up being very happy with everything that went on, I saw Corbin yesterday at Ring Set Up, so he's still alive. I didn't see what happened, but like the camera is fucking toast, and he was walking around backstage. I was just waiting for the stick for him to walk. It was like guys were like trying to on each side kind of walk him, and he had these dark glasses on. Like, dude, this guy is fucked up.
And that's someone who did start, a little bit of training and, has kind of transitioned to.
He has an ankle injury. He's been out for a year and a half. He's got a sprained ankle.
So now you're not going to get him in the ring again for another 3 to 4 years because
exactly. Yes.
But what an angle when he comes back from being blind. So
yeah,
we haven't seen one of those.
He's going to cost Matt Vandegrift the heavyweight title.
Yeah. It's only fair that he blows a fireball in Vandegrift's face for revenge. So
Well, or we could do the Harvey Whippleman where the light was what blinded him.
Yeah.
When they did the Undertaker thing.
Right.
The blinding light caused me to get pinned.
Oh, man. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Really appreciative, too, of the fans, again, coming out for the show.
Also, the fans are going to be appreciative. They only have to look at a silhouette picture of you and not your goofy face.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the silhouetted picture is of my goofy face. So,
with the Nick Xander throbbing heartbeat in the background every time you speak.
Hey, you know what? Nick says it best. You can't stop that heartbeat.
Can't stop it. Well, if you do, then you won't know about it because you'll be dead. So
right. But again, appreciative of everyone coming out. It was a great turnout, and it was just wonderful to see the fans' reactions and really the energy in that building throughout the whole night. And
that's what it is, man. It's a credit to how good our fans are. Obviously it was Father's Day, so some of our longtime fans and. They had other issues. The Chief had stuff going on. And some of the fans, they couldn't make it because of it. But then there were some fans we hadn't seen in a while. And, they were excited to have basically a Father's Day present of checking out FSW. And as usual with the fans, you get at the end of the thing, the show, one of the best shows ever. So it's like, you know what? These fans just love what they're seeing. And, thankfully, I put together shows where they feel that it's definitely important for them to come and see it. And regardless of, the pricing or how their money situation is or whatever it is,
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that stood out to me too with the fans is what a nice turnout with the youngsters out there, the kids in the audience. It was great to see. And there's nothing better than, watching a match and then just catching your eye catches on that reaction of, the mad kid or the shocked kid. Because that just, it's such a magical thing to see the suspension of disbelief that children have when they watch,
or Tom Crawford.
Or Tom Crawford. Well, oh, thank God he got his hand up, though. I don't think he expected the back of the rail, but, man, if he wouldn't have got his hand up, whew, Tom Crawford would have been wearing glasses as well. So,
he took MK's role. Since MK wasn't there, somebody had to get the shit kicked out of him.
I'm so glad it wasn't Miranda. So,
yeah, because then Dom the Bomb would have to come down and then, take care of his girl's honor.
Well, hey, you know what? It's been a while. We still need to see Dom come down. And
there was rumors he was going to come down, and then, he chose not to. Guess he chose not to support his girl.
Wow.
So now we can force him to support his girl. One of Remy's first matches in Arizona was against Dom Vitale.
Wow. Man, so Remy was probably around 22, 23, and Dom was, about 52 at that time?
Something like that, yeah.
And on that note, next time I see Dom, I'll probably get my ass kicked. So there you go, fans. You can see my goofy ass get handed to me the next time I head to Arizona.
Yeah, I'm surprised nobody's jumped the rail to beat you up because you wouldn't put them on the podcast because they weren't relevant enough, because I know you've told me in the past, guys like the Suavecitos who beg to be on, you're like, dude, you guys aren't worthy to be on my show. So,
oh, you see, now you went with the Suavecitos. That was your mistake because as I'm leaving the parking lot, I see the Suavecitos. I roll down my window. I got Glenn King. I got Red Cup Jeff in the car. and I take the time to tell the Suavecitos that I was disappointed we didn't see more Suavecitos on the show. So,
well, don't worry.
saying.
Brett the Threat was pitching, hey, what if we do a 6-man tag with the Suavecitos? It's like, what the fuck are you even talking about? But the crazy thing was, after the Battle Royal, you know, Danny came back to tell me what a banger the Battle Royal match was because of them being in it. So it's a banger.
And on that note, everyone, it was a banger episode. And we will catch you guys next